Hey guys, back with another video today, and we have a pretty exciting video today. We are having a first look and a review of the WZ-111 5A, the brand new tier 10 Chinese heavy tank that's going to be introduced alongside its other tier 10 Chinese heavy tank counterpart, the 113, and will be unlockable from the WZ-11 model 1 to 4. And an absolute mouthful those tanks are to talk about, but having a look at this tank, guys, I think it looks really nice. I don't know how necessary of an addition it is to the game. The only reason that I think it is valuable to the game is that it's more in line with the WZ-111 tier 9 than it is with the 113. I mean, the 113 is not really a great lead-on tank. The WZ model 5A is pretty much a better WZ-11 model 1 to 4, guys. It is based, going in a bit of history, on the IS-2 and the IS-3 tanks. It's supposed to be quite like the T-10 tank, obviously in World of Tanks, because it has to perform with tanks like the IS-7 and the E-100. This tank is pretty damn good with its stats, and let's, rather than waffle on about this tank, have a look at its stats and see exactly why this tank is a pretty damn good tank. Right off the bat, guys, we are comparing the WZ-111 5A to the 113, which is the current tier 10 Chinese heavy tank that's now also going to be in line. So you can research the 113 or the WZ-111 5A directly from the WZ-111 1 to 4. God, those are a mouthful of tanks to name. And the IS-7 here, which is it's very closely linked to the WZ-111, as we're about to find out, guys. I've also got the tier 9 WZ-111 1 to 4, which is what the WZ-111 5A is based off. So that is obviously the tier 9 Chinese heavy tank. So if we have a look at the DPM here, we can see it does 2,625 damage points per minute as a base value. That is absolutely incredible. It's just a little bit worse than the 113, but it doesn't really matter, guys. Regardless, that 15 damage points do not matter. With that 2,625, it is incredible, especially when you compare it to the IS-7, which has an abysmal 2,145, at least when compared to the WZ-111 5A, and certainly better than the WZ-111 1 to 4, the tier 9, but that is to be expected. Penetration wise as well, it also has good penetration here compared to the other tanks. Now, it's certainly not amazing, but 250 millimeters of penetration is nothing to snub your nose at. It's better than 113 only just, and better than the WZ-111 1 to 4, which does share the same really hard hitting gun. And speaking of hard hitting, it does 490 alpha damage per shot. That is absolutely incredible. It's the exact same as the IS-7, which is renowned for its 130 millimeter gun, same as the WZ-111 1 to 4, which shares pretty much the same gun as the WZ-111 5A, and it does a little bit more hit points than the 113 at 440, but even 440 is quite large, and 490 is just absolutely incredible. Combined with a great rate of fire, you have a very formidable gun here indeed, guys. 130 caliber gun, same as all the other tanks except for the 113. The shell velocity as well isn't actually that bad. It's slightly better than the IS-7 and slightly worse than the 113, but it doesn't really matter, guys. You are going to have a pretty good shell velocity in this tank, considering how heavy the shell would be in real life. So at 930 meters, you're not going to have to lead too much with your target. Sure, it's not 1400 meters per second like the Reveille, but you know, that's a medium tank, or it's not going to share the same as APCR rounds. It is using the standard AP round, and it's really not that bad, guys, so you don't have to be upset about that. And now also look at its potential damage output. It carries 40 rounds, which does a whopping just under 20,000 damage points. You can take out the team very reliably in this tank, and you can also have a very diverse range of ammunition you carry in this tank as well, especially when you compare it to the 113, which doesn't get a bad, but it's not as good, 15,000, and the same as the IS-7 here at pretty much 15,000 as well. Now, gun handling is where this thing absolutely shines. A great aiming time considering the size of the gun at 2.5 seconds, way better than the 113, way better than the IS-7, and also way better than the WZ-111, so it's got a really good aiming time. Soft stats wise, it's not actually that terrible either. It's only slightly worse in terms of its dispersion value than the 113 at 0.39, but that's better than the IS-7 and better than the WZ-111 1 to 4. Hidden dispersion values are best out of all these comparisons. The same as the 113, better than the IS-7, and slightly better than the WZ-111 1 to 4. Depression as well is 7 degrees, which is really good for a Chinese tank, guys. It's now the same as the 113, which, remember, is getting a buff in patch 9.19.1 from 5 degrees, I believe. Better than the IS-7 and better than the WZ-111 1 to 4. So you can use ridgelines in this tank to a smaller extent. We'll have a look here. It is 7 degrees pretty much all around the front of this tank. Only towards the back does it get to a terrible 1 degree, but hopefully won't be having to shoot too much around the front of around the rear of the tank, I should say. Anyway, now if we have a look at its mobility as well, this thing is quite mobile indeed. It has a 15 power to weight ratio, which, although isn't as good as the 113 for sure, and isn't as good as the IS-7, it is faster at accelerating than the IS-7, guys, because of these hidden stats. 1.1 on hard terrain, 1.2 on medium terrain is better than the 1.3 on hard terrain for the IS-7, and the terrible 1.8 for the medium terrain resistance, and also the terrain resistance on soft grounds is 2.5, which is better than the 3.1. So this tank is faster than the IS-7, and the IS-7 is not a slow tank at all. It does weigh 20 tons, pretty much less than the IS-7 though, so don't think you can go ramming all of the other heavy tanks on the enemy team, because at tier 10 you probably can't do that. It isn't that heavy. It is 5 tons heavier than the WZ-111 1 to 4, but it is also a bit faster, although that does have very good ground resistance as well, so it does kind of balance out. But even so, it's still a little bit faster than the WZ-111 1 to 4, but not much. And turret traverse on this tank, it is slow, but it's not terrible. It's not great either. 26 degrees per second is pretty much the same as all the other tanks in this comparison, only slightly better than the IS-7 at a terrible 25 degrees. But there's tank traverse at 36 degrees per second. This tank bombs it, guys. It absolutely bombs it for a heavy tank. Better than the IS-7 for sure at 28 degrees, and better than the WZ-111 1 to 4. So guys, this tank does have a mobility edge over the tier 9 Chinese tank, and definitely over the IS-7, which has pretty poor traversing and similar kind of accelerations. Now on to the armor of this tank, and now the armor is definitely a letdown of this tank, guys. Do not think that this tank is very well armored, because it has to lose out somewhere for it to be balanced, which Wargaming have balanced it as much as they could anyway, or as much as they have. So it's only 140 millimeters of frontal armor on the front of this tank. There are some random spots on the front, which is a bit hard to see, so I'll put up into the visual model, and you can see these two little areas here are 140 millimeters of armor. So they are a bit odd, these areas here, but otherwise you've also got this 155 millimeter lower plate. But really its effective armor is about 230 to 220 if it's angling properly at you, and if it turns to the side it goes down to a terrible 200 to 210. So the hull on this tank isn't great, guys. Do not expect to pull off bounces all the time in this tank on the front. You're not going to, especially with its lower plate. Its lower plate can actually be pretty well armored at weird angles. If someone tries to shoot your lower plate when you're angled on the side, they'd be an idiot, because they should be shooting the side here. And also if they shoot these little areas down here, it's just going to ricochet automatically, because they're sloped at over 70 degrees, at 72 degrees it looks like here. So if any tank shoots in these random little areas down here, they're going to bounce. But anywhere else on the tank, most tanks at tier 10, at tier 9 are going to go through this tank pretty reliably. Sure, tier 8s are going to struggle, but tier 9s, a lot of the tanks will. Tier 10s, pretty much all tanks will be able to go through the front of this tank, guys. So that is where it does lose out. It does have its miracle spaced armor, as all Russian inspired tanks do, just over here, which has random ricochet angles. Not as good as the IS-7, will admit, but it is still pretty good. And the side armor as well is 80 millimeters, so you can pull off some bounces there, and nothing's going to overmatch you either. Pretty much anywhere on the tank, including the roof, guys. Talking about the turret, it is very well armored, as you would expect, but again, it's not amazing. It has these two glaring weak spots on top, which, although aren't very huge weaks, are like very poorly armored weak spots, they still are weak spots, and tanks can go through them. So a bit of the wiggle in this tank, moving the turret from side to side when when they're shooting at you. Obviously it won't move this fast at 26 degrees per second, but a bit of side-to-side action there will prevent some shots going through you. And if we have a look as well, the difference I wanted to show you between this tank and the WZ-111 Model 1-4 is pretty much 20 millimeters of armor at the front. Otherwise it has a very similar frontal armor kind of setup. Also the turret is pretty much the exact same on the WZ-111 1-4, with these two big weak spots and the effective armor on the front. So it isn't a massive armor upgrade when compared to the WZ-111 Model 1-4, the Tier 9, but it is still not bad. It's still better, with pretty much 220 effective armor on the lower plate and 240 or so on the upper plate, but it isn't that much better, guys. So don't get the idea that this is going to be the next IS-7 or the next impenetrable tank. It really isn't. And when compared to the 113 as well, I should say, if we pull that up, because why not, we can see that the 113 does have probably, I mean, arguably better armor on the upper plate anyway, and on the lower plate it is worse, but the 113 is renowned for that. So I think it's a very similar tank to the 113. In fact, they're very comparable, but in all honesty, I would probably go for the WZ-111 5A just because of that really hard-hitting 130mm gun. It is very, very powerful. I loved it at Tier 9, and so I know that if I grind out for the WZ-111 5A, I will love it at Tier 10. But I also did love the 113 because if you angle that the upper plate, you are pretty much a god in that tank. So, but it is a little bit faster, the 113. So that is something you have to take into consideration. It's got very similar armor, very similar gun handling, if not a little bit better as well, and is a bit faster. So that is something that you do need to think about. I mean, is the armor really worth it on the WZ-111, or is the gun alpha damage really worth it? That's up to you guys. For me, I think it is, but for a lot of players out there with probably a higher skill cap than me who value speed over the gun hard hitting, then maybe try and grind out the 113 as opposed to WZ-111 5A. Anyway, that was a massive tangent, but yeah, also health wise, 2200, it is better than the IS-7. Obviously it's better than WZ-111 1-4 because that's a Tier 9, but it is a bit worse than the 113, and really every hit point counts, and 100 hit point disparity is actually quite big. So don't think that it's nothing. It is a little bit of something. View range as well is incredible at 400 meters. Of course it's better than the light tanks in the game, but whatever, we won't even comment on that. So it's the exact same for the 113, exact same for the IS-7. They have incredible view range. So if you put coated optics on this tank, which I probably wouldn't recommend, but if you did, you'll be able to spot every other tank on the team just as well as they'd be able to spot you. Also, the fire chance on this tank is quite low at 12%, guys. But enough rambling on, so much rambling on. Let's have a look in the garage and see exactly what crew skills I would go to and what equipment I would use. Okay, so for crew skills, guys, for sure I would put Brothers in Arms first for all your crew members, and then once Brothers in Arms has been researched, I would get Sixth Sense on your commander, and I would probably put repairs for the gunner, the driver, and the loader, because you don't want to be in a heavy tank. You don't want to be stuck in one place for too long because you aren't as mobile as those other tanks. But as we know, guys, this is a pretty mobile tank, but regardless, that's what I would do anyway. And for equipment, I would for sure put on vertical stabilizer to make this gun even more accurate, because why not? If you can mount a vertical stabilizer, guys, definitely do it. Improve ventilation class 3, because I think that 5% crew skill to all the crews is really, really important. And also a large caliber tank gun rammer, because you want to get that DPM even better, and you want to push that DPM to over 3,000, because as we know, guys, this tank can do that. I mean, without gun rammer, we're doing 2,738. Let's see if we can get over 3,000, guys. Look at that. So the effective values of this tank can be pretty insane. And this tank, guys, as we will see in the replay right now, is no disappointment. It is a pretty damn strong tank. But I would like to stress that I do not think this tank is objectively overpowered. I think that its hull armor is blatantly shit compared to the other tier 10s anyway, and although it has crazy stats like the 400-meter view range, I think it's certainly not the worst tank that Wargaming has introduced, and in fact I think it is good for the game because I think that it leads on better from the WZ-111 model 1 to 4, the tier 9 to the tier 10, a lot better than to the 113, because the 113 is a completely different tank to the WZ-111. But anyway guys, that is a tangent. Let's have a look at the replay right now. Alright guys, so here we are in battle. Remember guys, this is the test server, and I should also stress that this tank can change. It can have its statistics change. It might not even be introduced into the game for all we know, so don't you know, just keep that in mind. Take this replay with a grain of salt. Now of course this is the test server. We're watching Exalted Jury in his well at least the WZ-111 that he has purchased on the test server. It does have pretty bad ping as well guys, this game, and it's going to have a lot of lag spikes as well, but I can promise you that this game is a pretty damn impressive game. Now if you have a look at the enemy team, we got what, 5 type 5 heavies on the other team, or yeah, 5 and a mouse, so we've got all the overpowered tanks in the world on the enemy team, because people want to try it before they will be buffed, because they are planned to be buffed anyway. And I'm surprised there isn't more WZ-111 5As on the other team, but whenever people are more interested in playing the tanks that they know will do well. So he's taking a pretty defensive position here. And remember as well that everyone is firing premium rounds, including Exalted Jury, so this isn't completely indicative of how a game would actually go, but we can see that his premium rounds are pretty good. I mean, what is the penetration on the premium rounds? 340. Jesus. Okay, so these premium rounds, they will go through pretty much any target in the game frontally, so I don't know how much I like the premium rounds on this tank, but whatever. Hopefully premium rounds will change, but that's a topic for another time, guys. So far, the team doesn't really give a shit on either side, and they're just rushing forward. And they're at a lock now. This is Winterberg, so Winter Erlenberg, and this is where all the heavy tanks go all the time. But so far, the game seems pretty even at the moment. He has done a single shot. He rolled very low there for only 438 damage, but here he did 513 damage, so he rolled high. I guess that makes up for the very low roll damage. Took a high explosive shell there from the Type 5 Heavy. And here that Jagdpanzer is being pretty ballsy indeed. You can see that the gun handling on this tank is pretty good. You can see he snapped in a shot there at the lower plate of that Jagdpanzer E100. So gun handling on this tank, guys, it is actually pretty damn good, considering. I mean, it's no Russian high tier tank, but it is. I mean, Russian high tier medium tank. It is still a pretty inaccurate gun, but for this kind of tank, it is actually quite accurate. As silly as that sounds. Takes another shot from the Type 5 Heavy. Lost pretty much half his health by being hit by those stupid rounds on the Type 5 Heavy. He bounces a shot on the top of the Type 5 Heavy, even using those heat rounds, so I mean, what can we say? That Type 5 Heavy takes out the 113 with absolutely no issues there. So here we can see the great mobility of this tank. It was able to get around the corner so quickly that the Type 5 Heavy didn't even poke out at all to even check what was going on. He tries to take another shot at the cupola there, but just bounces. It's getting really frustrating, isn't it, guys? Just watching that Type 5 Heavy bounce every single shot, even the premium rounds. Bounces another one. So far, the scores are 6-4 to his team. So his team is doing pretty well. He finally realizes that shooting the cupola isn't the best bet, and just shoot the front of the turret and you will go through if you're using certain rounds anyway. So far he hasn't done many penetrating shots. I think he's only done 4 penetrating shots, or 5 maybe. Maybe 5. No, I think 4. And he's done almost 2,000 damage. So you really don't need to fire too often in this tank to be able to do a huge amount of damage in a game. Remember, this tank can have over 3,000 DPM easy. Easy with good improved, with good crew skills and with good equipment as well. The right equipment anyway. pretty cool actually. If we have a look at the side of the turret here, you can put writing on this area here on this little ammo box. That's a cool little detail, I think. Anyway, I'm like a child. I'm getting very sidetracked very, very easily indeed. Type 5 Heavy is really taking out a lot of his damage here. But Exalted Jury can see that his team is actually starting to crumble pretty quickly around him. He has to deal with 5 Type 5 Heavies on the enemy team, plus a mouse versus his team. And we all know the Type 5 Heavy is pretty damn good at the moment. Soon to be a little less damn good, but probably still going to be pretty good indeed. Look at the mobility of this tank, guys. I'm pretty shocked. It is so fast, considering. But it doesn't have great armor. I guess we have to remember that. It sees an opportunity and takes out that Type 5 Heavy. But there's a Type 5 Heavy coming around his flank. So he does need to be very, very careful. But he has great opportunity here to just take out these tanks here. And doesn't even aim, but doesn't need to because he's firing the heat rounds anyway. And that Type 5 Heavy is an absolute goner. And he gets a shot in right at the back. No issues here. So far, 3,349 damage and 3 kills. So pretty damn good. But it looks like his eastern flank has completely failed indeed. He sets the other Type 5 Heavy on fire. Now he's on 4 kills, having done 4,334 damage. Now, again, please take this replay with a grain of salt. This is a test server. Everybody's going to, well, not everybody, but you know, these players on the enemy team could just be tier 1 players wanting to try out tier 10 tanks for the first time and don't even know how to properly move a tank, let alone play well. So take this replay with a grain of salt. I still think there are some better tanks at tier 10. For example, the Mouse and the Type 5 Heavy, of course, they are overpowered. But I think this game, this tank will be a really formidable tank in random battles on your normal server, wherever you play. Just because of the high hitting alpha damage. It's basically an IS-7 with better mobility and worse armor, and a better gun. So it's got 2 advantages over the IS-7 and 1 disadvantage. And even the armor on this tank, you know, is not actually that bad, guys. So I think that this tank is better than the IS-7. Having said that, a lot of the tanks aren't are better than the IS-7, especially since tanks don't rely on their armor anymore. Let's be real, guys. When everyone's slinging premium rounds on them. I shouldn't get too salty. I do it myself, but I'm talking to myself here, guys. Anyway, so his team is doing really well. He's done quite a lot of damage, but probably in the grand scheme of this game isn't excessively huge amount of damage. That 113 is a one-shot kill, but he is going to be a hard target to hit, considering he's over the other side of the ridge line. And the other players on the enemy team, they're going to be pretty damn good, considering they both have 8 kills between them. And that Type 5 Heavy is on a lot of hit points. I mean, really, that Type 5 Heavy could take out Exalted Jury here in a single shot. He could splash him now and destroy him. But Exalted Jury was able to take out that 113. Gets a shot into the back of that Type 5 Heavy, doing a low roll there of only 444 damage only. So he makes his way over to the Type 5 Heavy. I mean, the game is not over yet, guys. That Type 5 Heavy could so easily win this game, considering that his teammate is about to die. Or very likely to die. If that Type 5 Heavy is using the 150mm, I believe it is. Which he very well could be. It looks like he is. Now, Exalted is using his superior mobility to the Type 5 Heavy to be able to get around him and hide from him, really. To be able to hide and take shots at his own engagement. If he tries to engage that Type 5 Heavy, one-on-one, he will lose, no doubt. Absolutely no doubt at all. He needs to be able to choose the how of the battle here. Exactly where combat will take place. So Exalted Jury here must be shitting bricks at this point. I know I certainly would be. My heart would be pumping. He does get a shot into the side of the Type 5 Heavy and was spotted, but I think he was only spotted after he shot. I can't say that for sure. You would think not, but it's very possible. So you can see that Exalted Jury here clearly knows what he's doing. He's trying to confuse a Type 5 Heavy and play a kind of game of a random numbers game and just pop out of anywhere, really. So Exalted Jury is being very careful here. That Type 5 Heavy, if he can penetrate, is also a one-shot kill. So he's going to see right now if he is around the corner. Well, he's being very ballsy here, but it looks like that Type 5 Heavy is going to try and find him. But we don't know where he's gone, and he has been spotted. Very risky move there, but he was able to take out that Type 5 Heavy in a pretty damn good game. I mean, wow, let's have a look at the post-game stats and just see exactly how good this game was. So guys, he was able to pick up a Mastery Badge Ace Tanker, an Arsonist medal, a Duelist medal, a 5 for Effect medal, a High Caliber medal, and a Top Gun medal. So he was able to do pretty well in this game, and he was also able to do 6,888 damage. But remember guys, he was firing full premium rounds. Everyone else was firing full premium rounds. These are not the kind of tanks you would encounter in World of Tanks. You wouldn't find 5 Type Heavies, I don't think, on the other team. So just take this game with a very large grain of salt, and just remember guys that this is a public test battle. Everything is subject to change, and also it isn't the greatest indicator, but at least you could see how it moved, how it fired, and how it played, and I think that this tank does play pretty damn well. So guys, we've just watched a replay, and now we have to ask ourselves the question, do we want to grind this tank? I personally want this tank in my garage. I just think that it is really suited for my playstyle, and that's something that I'm pretty excited to grind my way towards. So I personally want it. Do you want it? Maybe you can tell me in the comments, guys. Anyway, thank you guys so very much for watching this video. If you did like it, leave it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down, but at least tell me why, guys. Also subscribe if you want similar content to this going into the future, guys. So thanks so very much, and I'll see you next time.